She grinned as our daughter backed her affair. Called it freedom. Called it honesty. I sat there watching my family celebrate my betrayal. Didn't shout. Didn't break anything. Just promised them consequences. 3 months later, her elite attorney burst into the room screaming, "Do you realize what he's done?" My name is Preston Doyle. I'm 53 years old, and I've spent the last 25 years building what I thought was a family. I was wrong. What I actually built was a stage where people I loved could perform their betrayal. That Thursday, Jennifer insisted on hosting what she called a family dinner. Just the three of us, she said, though I noticed she'd set 4 places at the table. When I asked about the extra setting, she smiled that new smile of hers, the one that never reached her eyes, and said a friend might stop by. The friend was Derek Collins, my so-called buddy from the country club, the guy I played golf with for 3 years. He walked in like he owned the place, kissed Jennifer on the cheek, and the lipstick transfer on his collar told me everything I needed to know. Same shade I'd seen on our bathroom counter 2 weeks earlier. Same shade I'd scrubbed off with bleach, trying to pretend I hadn't noticed. Madison arrived 20 minutes late, breezing in with her phone already in her hand. 23 years old, and still acting like the world owed her something. She hugged her mother, waved at Derek like they were old pals, and barely glanced my way. We sat down to eat. Jennifer poured wine for everyone, including Madison, who wasn't even legally old enough to drink. Nobody seemed to care about that little detail. The conversation flowed around me like I was furniture. Derek talked about his new boat. Jennifer laughed at jokes that weren't funny. Madison scrolled through her phone between bites. Then Jennifer raised her glass. The crystal caught the light from the chandelier I'd installed with my own hands 5 years ago. She looked at Derek, then at Madison, and said something I'll never forget. "To freedom," Jennifer announced, her voice steady and cold, "and to finally being honest with ourselves." Madison lifted her glass immediately. My daughter, my little girl who used to bring me dandelions from the yard, looked at her mother with something close to worship and added her own toast. "Mom deserves to be happy," Madison said, looking directly at me for the first time that evening. "You've made her miserable long enough, Dad." Jennifer grinned. Not smiled. Grinned. Like she just won something. Derek raised his glass with a smirk I wanted to wipe off his face. They all clinked their glasses together while I sat there, watching my family celebrate my replacement. I picked up my scotch, drained it in one swallow, and set the glass down carefully. When I spoke, my voice came out calmer than I'd ever heard it. "You'll all get exactly what you deserve," I said. "I promise you that." Nobody understood what I meant. They were too busy enjoying their little party. But I knew. I'd known for months. And I'd been preparing for this moment longer than they'd been planning their betrayal. I stood up, grabbed my jacket from the back of the chair, and walked out of that dining room for the last time. Behind me, I heard Jennifer laugh and say something to Derek. I didn't catch the words, and I didn't care to. The family portraits still hung on the wall as I passed them. 25 years of lies, framed and hanging in the hallway. I didn't take them down. I just kept walking. I didn't sleep that night. Couldn't. Instead, I sat in the guest house I'd renovated last year, the one Jennifer had mocked as my midlife crisis project, and went through every document I'd been quietly preparing for the past 8 months. See, I'm not an impulsive man. Never have been. When I first noticed a lipstick on the sink, the perfume I'd never bought her, the way she started dressing up for client meetings that never seemed to close any deals, I didn't confront her. I watched. I documented. And I called Ted Langford. Theodore Langford had been handling my grandfather's estate for 17 years. The man was 68 years old, sharp as a razor, and had forgotten more about trust law than most attorneys would ever learn. When I explained my situation to him over lunch 6 months ago, he didn't offer sympathy. He offered strategy. "Preston," Ted had said, stirring his coffee with deliberate precision, "if you're right about this, we need to move quickly. But we move quietly. No drama. No announcements. Just paperwork." That's exactly what we did. Every asset my grandfather left me, every property, every investment account, they all got restructured. Limited liability companies, irrevocable trusts, foundation transfers, all completely legal, all completely beyond Jennifer's reach. She never noticed because she'd never cared to notice. When I asked her to sign documents during our quarterly tax reviews, she'd wave me off and sign wherever I pointed. "Just handle the boring stuff, Preston," she'd said more than once. That's your department. Well, she was right about that. At 6:45 in the morning, I showered, put on my best suit, and drove to Ted's office downtown. He was already there, sitting behind his mahogany desk with a pot of coffee brewing and the divorce papers laid out in neat stacks. Ready? Ted asked, looking at me over his reading glasses. Been ready for months, I replied. We filed at 8:06. Court opened at 8, but there was already a line. I wanted to be early. Wanted this done before Jennifer even realized I was serious. The clerk stamped the documents, handed me my copies, and, just like that, 25 years of marriage became a legal proceeding. Ted walked me back to my car. She's going to come at you hard, Preston. Her, and whatever lawyer she hires. They'll try to paint you as controlling, vindictive, hiding assets. Let them try, I said. Everything's documented. Everything's legal. Everything's time-stamped from before she ever started stepping out. That's what I like to hear, Ted said with a slight smile. Now go live your life. Let me handle the paperwork war. I drove back to the guest house and waited. Jennifer didn't call until 2:17 in the afternoon. I watched my phone buzz with her name on the screen. Didn't answer. She called 4 more times in the next 20 minutes. Then came the text. Where are you? Did you run off to sulk again? This is childish, Preston. I replied with one sentence and a tracking number. Divorce papers being delivered to your attorney by 4 p.m. today. My phone exploded with calls after that. I turned it off, poured myself a drink, and sat on the porch watching the sun move across the sky. For the first time in months, I felt like I could breathe. Jennifer's attorney made contact 3 days after she was served. His name was Lawrence Pierce, some hotshot divorce lawyer who wore $1,000 suits and drove a Mercedes he probably leased to impress clients. I'd seen his billboards around town, fighting for your rights plastered across his smug face. The demand letter arrived via certified mail. 10 pages of legal posturing that basically boiled down to one thing. Jennifer wanted everything. The house. Both cars. Alimony calculated at 40% of my supposed income. Full control of what Pierce called marital investment assets, which included my pension and the rental properties downtown. I read it twice, then handed it to Ted over lunch at his club. Ambitious, Ted said, scanning the pages with an expression that never changed. And completely delusional. Can they actually claim any of this? I asked. Ted set the letter down and looked at me over his coffee cup. They can claim whatever they want, Preston. Doesn't mean they'll get it. Everything they're listing either predates your marriage or exists in trusts she has no legal access to. She signed documents, though. Years ago, when we did the estate planning. Exactly, Ted said. She signed away her advisory rights to the Wellington Trust. Voluntarily. With full legal representation present, even if she didn't pay attention. That signature is our nuclear option. What about the house? Which house? Ted asked with a slight smile. The marital residence is in your name, purchased with trust funds before the marriage. She can argue for it all she wants. The paperwork says otherwise. Ted drafted a response that same afternoon. 1 page. Professional. Devastating. It listed every asset Pierce had demanded and explained, in precise legal language, exactly why Jennifer had no claim to any of it. He included a spreadsheet showing the trust structure, dated documents, and notarized signatures going back 15 years. This won't end it, Ted warned me. Pierce will push back. They always do. But this is our opening position. We're not negotiating. We're educating them about reality. The response went out the next morning. I spent that afternoon at the gym, working out tension I didn't even know I'd been carrying. When I got back to the guest house, there were 7 missed calls from Madison. No voicemails. Just calls. I didn't call back. She made her choice at that dinner. Chose her mother. Chose Derek. Chose to mock the man who'd paid for everything she'd ever had. She could live with that choice. My phone buzzed again. This time a text from Jennifer herself. You're being unreasonable. We need to talk about this like adults. I deleted it without responding. She'd had 25 years to talk to me like an adult. That time was over. Lawrence Pierce didn't take Ted's response well. I know because his next letter was twice as long and half as professional. He accused me of hiding assets, called the trust structure suspiciously convenient, and threatened to file motions for full financial discovery. Ted actually laughed when he read it. Let him, Ted said during our meeting. Discovery works both ways. He wants to see our books. Fine. We'll show him everything. Every properly filed document. Every legitimate structure. Every signature his client made without bothering to read what she was signing. You think that'll stop him? No, Ted admitted. But it'll slow him down considerably when he realizes how deep this rabbit hole goes. Pierce filed his motion. We responded with a document dump that would have made the IRS jealous. 97 pages of trust documentation. Property transfer records dating back to 1989. Tax returns showing clear separation between marital income and trust distributions. Articles of incorporation for the 3 LLCs that held the rental properties. And my personal favorite, the signed acknowledgement form from Jennifer, dated 7 years ago, where she explicitly waived any claim to assets held in the Wellington Trust. Ted had made her sign it during routine estate planning. Told her it was standard paperwork for tax optimization. She'd been in a hurry that day, rushing to make a hair appointment, and signed it without reading a single word. Whatever keeps the IRS happy, Preston, she'd said at the time, barely looking at the document. That signature was now Exhibit A in our defense. Pierce went quiet for 2 weeks. Then he called Ted directly, which apparently meant something in lawyerland. Ted put him on speaker during our meeting so I could hear. Your client's position is untenable, Pierce said, his voice tight. These structures you've created are clearly designed to circumvent community property laws. These structures, Ted replied calmly, were created before your client was even in the picture. My client inherited them. Your client signed documents acknowledging their separate nature. This isn't circumvention. This is basic estate management. We'll argue commingling of assets. Please do. I have 15 years of bank records showing complete separation. Not 1 cent of trust money touched marital accounts. Not 1 marital dollar entered trust holdings. Good luck with that argument. The call ended shortly after. Pierce had nothing left to say. Ted looked at me across his desk. They're starting to understand what they're up against. This is when they typically get desperate. How desperate? I asked. Desperate enough to make mistakes, Ted said, and we'll be ready for every single one. Madison showed up at the guest house on a Tuesday afternoon without warning. I heard her car pull up, that BMW I'd bought her for graduation, and watched through the window as she sat there for a full minute before getting out. She was rehearsing, I could tell, probably going over whatever speech Jennifer had fed her. When she finally knocked, I let her wait. Made coffee. Checked my email. Let her knock twice more before I opened the door. She stood there in designer jeans and a jacket that cost more than most people's monthly rent. Everything she wore, I'd paid for. The car behind her, I'd paid for. The college degree that got her nowhere, I'd paid for that too. Can I come in? Madison asked, her voice smaller than I'd heard it in years. I stepped aside without answering. She walked in slowly, looking around the small space like she was touring a museum exhibit on how the other half lived. This is nice, she said, lying through her teeth. Cozy. I sat down with my coffee. Didn't offer her any. Just waited. Madison perched on the edge of the couch, fidgeting with her phone case. Dad, I came here because I think this has all gotten out of hand. You're throwing away everything over one mistake. One mistake, I repeated, keeping my voice level. Is that what we're calling your mother's affair now? It's not like she planned it, Madison said, the words coming faster now like she'd memorized them. These things happen. People grow apart. You should be grateful she stayed as long as she did. I set my coffee down carefully. Grateful? Yes, Madison said, gaining confidence she shouldn't have had. Dad, honestly, you've always been kind of closed off. Distant. Mom gave you everything she had. She tried. You just never appreciated it. I leaned forward, hands folded, and looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. Saw Jennifer's words coming out of her mouth. Saw the entitlement I'd enabled by never saying no. Saw the person she'd become while I was busy working to give her everything. Madison, I said quietly, I changed my will last week. She laughed. Actually laughed. Okay, Dad. Sure. I'm serious. You were in it. Substantial trust provisions. Education funds for your future children. Property inheritance. All of it. I paused. Not anymore. The smile died on her face. What are you talking about? You told me I should be grateful your mother cheated on me. You toasted their affair like it was something to celebrate. And now you're here, repeating her excuses, trying to make me the villain. I stood up. You chose a side, Madison. I respect that. But you don't get to choose your mother and still expect my money. You're kidding, she whispered. You wouldn't actually do that over this. I already did. Ted Langford filed the revision 4 days ago. There's a conduct clause now, written by me, filed by him, completely legal and irrevocable without my explicit consent, which you won't get. Madison stood up fast enough that the couch shifted. Mom said you were just trying to scare us. Tell your mother, I said, walking to the door and opening it, that the trust revision was already filed. Tell her that only Ted Langford has authorization to reverse it. Tell her about the conduct clause that removes anyone who publicly works against the estate's integrity. That word, old guy. Madison's voice rose. The one from Christmas dinner 2 years ago that you kept talking about while I was on my phone. Executive trustee of the Wellington estate, I confirmed. The one you ignored while scrolling Instagram. That's who controls everything now. You're cutting me out completely? Madison's voice shook. I'm still your daughter. You are, I said. But you chose your side. You defended her affair. You mocked me at my own table. Those were your choices. These are mine. She didn't slam the door when she left. That would have required conviction. She closed it softly, like she thought I might still call her back. I didn't, because that wasn't a warning. It was a verdict. The call from Dorothy Richardson came 2 days after Madison's visit. Jennifer's mother, 72 years old, cancer survivor, and the only member of Jennifer's family who'd ever treated me with genuine respect. Preston, Dorothy said when I answered, I need to see you. Not at your place. Somewhere neutral. Please. We met at a diner halfway between her assisted living facility and my guest house. Dorothy was waiting in a booth when I arrived, coffee already ordered, looking older than I remembered but sharper in the eyes. Thank you for coming, she said as I slid into the seat across from her. Of course, Doc. You've never asked me for anything. Figure it must be important. She wrapped both hands around her coffee cup. I heard about the divorce. About Madison getting cut from your will. About everything falling apart. I assumed Jennifer's version of events. I asked. She tried, Dorothy said. Told me you were being vindictive. That you couldn't handle her finding happiness. That you were punishing everyone because your ego was bruised. She looked up at me. I didn't believe a word of it. That surprised me. Why not? Because I know my daughter, Preston. I know exactly what she's capable of. And I know what you've done for this family for 25 years. Dorothy reached across the table and put her hand on mine. I also know about the medical bills. I went still. The cancer treatments, Dorothy continued. The experimental therapy that insurance wouldn't cover. The specialist consultations in Boston. The home care nurses. Her voice broke slightly. Jennifer told me Medicare was covering it. She said I qualified for some special program. There was no program, was there? Dorothy's eyes filled, but no tears fell. It was you. All of it. Every appointment. Every treatment. Every bill that saved my life. That was your money. I didn't answer. Didn't need to. How much? Dorothy asked. Doesn't matter. Preston. How much? I exhaled slowly. $140,000 over 3 years. But I never wanted you to know. You were sick. You needed help. I had the means. That's all that mattered. Dorothy pulled her hand back and wiped her eyes with a napkin. Jennifer doesn't know, does she? No. I told her the trust was handling some charity medical work. She never asked for details. Of course she didn't, Dorothy said bitterly. Too busy to notice her own mother almost died. Too distracted by her affair to wonder how the bills were being paid. She looked at me hard. You're a better man than my daughter deserves, Preston. You always were. I appreciate that. I'm testifying for you, she said suddenly. If this goes to court, if they try to paint you as some monster who's punishing people for sport, I'm testifying about the medical bills, about your character, about what kind of man you really are. That'll destroy your relationship with Jennifer. Dorothy smiled sadly. That relationship died when she chose Derek over her marriage. When she let Madison disrespect you. When she forgot that family means something. She stood up slowly, gathering her purse. You saved my life, Preston. The least I can do is tell the truth about yours. She left cash on the table for both our coffees and walked out with more dignity than her daughter had ever shown. I sat there for another 20 minutes, staring at cold coffee, realizing that sometimes the people you marry and to see you clearer than the ones you married. Lawrence Pierce burst into Jennifer's temporary office at her sister Sarah's house on a Thursday morning. I know because Sarah called Ted immediately afterward, and Ted called me. Jennifer had been working from Sarah's place since I'd changed the locks on the main house. Another thing Pierce hadn't realized I could do legally since the property was trust-owned and she'd never been on the deed. According to Sarah, who was apparently having serious second thoughts about supporting her sister's affair, Pierce didn't knock. Didn't wait to be announced. Just threw the door open so hard it hit the wall, his face white and his briefcase hanging open like he'd been running. Do you realize who's rewritten his will? Pierce shouted at Jennifer, his professional composure completely gone. Jennifer had been on a video call with some potential clients. Sarah said she heard Jennifer say something dismissive like, "I'm in the middle of something, Lawrence." Pierce pulled out a document and slammed it on the desk. "This is what your husband filed last week. Do you understand what this means?" Sarah, standing in the hallway, heard Jennifer's voice change from annoyed to confused. "What are you talking about?" "The Wellington Trust," Pierce said, and Sarah could hear papers rustling. "The one I thought was maybe 2 or 3 million in assets. The one I figure we can negotiate on." He paused. "It's not 2 or 3 million, Jennifer. How much is it? Try 15 million in liquid assets. Another 20 in property holdings. Renewable energy investments worth at least 8 million. And a foundation structure that controls another 12 million in grant allocations." Pierce's voice rose. "That's $55 million, Jennifer. 55 million that you have zero legal claim to because you signed away your rights 7 years ago." The video call apparently ended abruptly. Sarah heard Jennifer say something, but couldn't make out the words. "And that's not even the worst part," Pierce continued. "He's rewritten his will. Everything goes to the Crescent Foundation, veteran housing programs, and a scholarship fund. You're not in it. Madison's not in it. Your mother's not in it. There's a conduct clause managed by Theodore Langford that specifically excludes anyone who's acted against the estate's interests." "That can't be legal," Jennifer said. "It's completely legal. Filed. Notarized. Backed by documentation going back 30 years. And here's the beautiful part, the part that makes me want to quit this case right now. You helped him do it." Sarah heard Pierce laugh, but it wasn't a happy sound. "Every paper you signed without reading. Every trust document you called boring. Every time you told him to just handle the financial stuff because you couldn't be bothered. You built this cage yourself, Jennifer. You just locked the door." Sarah said. There was silence for a long moment. Then she heard Jennifer say quietly, "What do I do?" "Pray," Pierce replied. "Pray he's feeling generous when this is over, because legally, you're about to walk away with nothing." Ted played me the voicemail from Sarah later that day. She'd recorded the whole conversation on her phone. Said she wanted me to know what kind of lawyer Pierce really was, and what Jennifer was finally starting to understand. I listened to it twice. Didn't feel victory. Didn't feel satisfaction. Just felt tired. "This isn't over," Ted said. "Pierce will try something desperate. They always do when they realize they've lost." "Let him try," I said. "We've been 3 steps ahead this entire time. No reason to stop now." Derek Collins disappeared exactly 9 days after Pierce's meltdown in Jennifer's office. Not gradually. Not with explanation. Just gone. Sarah called me personally to tell me. "Preston, I thought you should know. Derek packed up and left town. Jennifer's been trying to reach him for 2 days. His phone's disconnected. His condo's cleared out. Even his boat's gone from the marina. How's Jennifer taking it?" I asked. "How do you think?" Sarah said. "She's devastated. Keeps saying there must be some mistake. That he wouldn't just leave without talking to her." Sarah paused. "But I did some digging, Preston. Called a friend who works at the marina. Derek sold that boat 3 weeks ago. Right around the time Pierce would have told Jennifer about her financial situation. So he knew she wasn't getting anything. He knew, and he ran." Sarah's voice hardened. "Jennifer thought he loved her. Thought they were going to build a life together. Turns out he was just waiting to see if she'd land the money. When that fell through, so did he. I should have felt something. Vindication, maybe. Satisfaction at watching Jennifer's fantasy fall apart. But all I felt was a dull ache for the years I'd wasted on someone who'd never valued what she had." "There's more," Sarah said. "I found out Derek's done this before. 3 times, actually. Wealthy married women. He romances them, encourages them to leave their husbands, then disappears when the money doesn't materialize. There's a woman in Connecticut who lost everything because of him. Another in Rhode Island. Jennifer know this. She does now. I showed her the court records, the restraining orders, the pattern." Sarah sighed. "She's not just heartbroken, Preston. She's humiliated. Realized she threw away 25 years for a con artist who never cared about her at all. Jennifer tried calling me that night. 7 times. Left 1 voicemail. Preston, please. I know I don't deserve it, but can we just talk? I made a terrible mistake. I see that now. Derek's gone and I need to talk to someone who knows me. Please call me back. I deleted the voicemail without listening to it completely. Blocked her number. Changed my locks again, just to be safe. Ted called the next morning. Jennifer's attorney filed a motion to pause the divorce proceedings. Says his client needs time to reconsider her position. Translation: she wants to come back now that her lover's gone and the money's out of reach. That's exactly what it means, Ted confirmed. What do you want to do? Deny the motion, I said. File for a restraining order preventing her from coming to any property I own. And let's accelerate this divorce. I want it done within 60 days. Aggressive, Ted said approvingly. I'll have the papers filed today. One more thing, I added. Make sure the restraining order specifically mentions she's not allowed within 500 feet of the guest house. I'm tired of looking over my shoulder. Consider it done. Jennifer showed up anyway 2 days later. Violated the temporary order before it was even finalized. Stood in my driveway, crying, asking me to just listen for 5 minutes. I called the police. Waited inside while they removed her from the property. Watched through the window as she argued with the officers, gesturing at the house, probably telling them this was all a misunderstanding. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was consequences finally catching up to someone who thought she was untouchable. The final hearing took place on a cold November morning. Not a trial, just a procedural division hearing where the judge would review our filings and make final determinations. Clean, clinical, and absolutely devastating for Jennifer's side. I arrived with Ted at 8:30. Jennifer was already there with Lawrence Pierce, who looked like he'd aged 5 years in 3 months. She wore a navy suit that probably cost a fortune, trying to look dignified. She wouldn't meet my eyes. Madison sat behind her mother, arms crossed, staring at nothing. No Derek to support Jennifer. No friends in the gallery. Just her daughter, and a lawyer who knew he'd already lost. The judge was a woman named Carol Brennan, 62 years old with a reputation for cutting through nonsense. She reviewed the files for 10 minutes while we all sat in silence, then looked up over her reading glasses. I've reviewed the trust documentation, Judge Brennan said. The Wellington Trust predates this marriage by 12 years. Mrs. Doyle signed acknowledgement of its separate status during estate planning in 2018. Those signatures are notarized and witnessed. She turned a page. The Crescent Foundation transfer is properly filed and legally sound. The conduct clause in the revised will is unusual, but not illegal. Pierce stood up. Your Honor, we believe. Mr. Pierce, Judge Brennan interrupted. I've read your filings. All 17 of them. Your arguments about commingling are unsupported by evidence. Your claims about hidden assets are contradicted by documentation going back 3 decades. Your client signed away her rights voluntarily. This court will not overturn legal documents simply because your client regrets not reading them. Jennifer's chin dropped. Madison put her head in her hands. The trust assets remain with Mr. Doyle, Judge Brennan continued. The marital home, purchased with trust funds before the marriage, remains with Mr. Doyle. The vehicles, the investment accounts, the commercial properties, all remain with Mr. Doyle. Mrs. Doyle will receive her personal belongings and any assets she brought into the marriage, which according to these records, totals approximately $17,000 in jewelry and personal savings. Your Honor, Pierce tried again, his voice desperate. 25 years of marriage. 25 years of marriage during which your client enjoyed a lifestyle funded entirely by assets she has no legal claim to, Judge Brennan said sharply. This court sympathizes with difficult situations, Mr. Pierce, but sympathy does not override legal documentation. The division stands as filed. She signed the order. The clerk stamped it. Just like that, it was over. Pierce gathered his papers without looking at Jennifer. Madison finally glanced at me, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't seen in years. Regret. Real, genuine regret. I stood up. Ted put a hand on my shoulder briefly, then walked out ahead of me. I followed without looking back at Jennifer or Madison. Didn't need to. That chapter was closed. Outside, the November wind cut through the parking lot. Ted shook my hand. It's done, he said simply. Yeah, I replied. It is. 2 years later, I ran into Jennifer at a grocery store in the next town over. I was picking up steaks for a barbecue, just living my quiet life, when I turned the corner, and there she was. She looked older, tired in a way that went beyond physical. Her cart held budget brands and sale items. She wore jeans and a plain sweater, nothing like the designer clothes she used to favor. Our eyes met. She froze. I watched recognition and shame wash across her face in equal measure. Preston, she said quietly, almost like she wasn't sure she should speak. I nodded politely. Jennifer. She opened her mouth like she wanted to say something, then closed it. Her hands gripped the cart handle, so tight her knuckles went white. I could see her trying to find words, any words that might bridge the canyon between where we'd been and where we'd ended up. I didn't help her, just stood there, waiting to see if she'd actually try to have this conversation. How have you been? She finally asked, and the question sounded ridiculous even as she said it. Good, I replied simply. You? She laughed, but it was hollow. Managing. Working retail now. Living with Sarah temporarily until I can afford my own place. She paused. Madison's doing okay. She's working at a marketing firm. Entry level. She asks about you sometimes. That's good, I said, meaning it. I hope she finds what she's looking for. Jennifer's eyes filled with tears. Preston, don't. I said gently but firmly. Whatever you're about to say, don't. It's been 2 years. We're both different people now. Let's leave it at that. She nodded, wiping her eyes quickly. You're right. I wanted you to know that I understand now. What I threw away. What Derek really was. What you. She stopped herself. Never mind. I hope you're happy, Preston. I really do. I am, I said. And I meant it. I walked past her down the aisle, grabbed what I needed, and headed to check out. Didn't look back. Didn't feel anger or satisfaction or even pity. Just felt neutral, like passing a stranger on the street who used to mean something a long time ago. Henry, my son from my first marriage, was waiting in my house when I got back. He'd flown in from Seattle for the weekend. 32 years old, a pediatric surgeon, and the best thing I'd ever had a hand in creating. Dad, he said, helping me unload groceries. You know the foundation scholarship program just funded its 50th student? 50 already, I said, genuinely surprised. 50 kids who wouldn't have had a chance otherwise, Henry said. All because you decided to put your money where it could actually matter. He paused. Mom would have been proud. Your grandfather, too. I thought about the Wellington Trust, about all those years of building something that would outlast me. About Jennifer and Madison, who'd wanted to tear it down for temporary comfort. About Dorothy, who'd stood by me when her own daughter wouldn't. Yeah, I said, firing up the grill. I think you're right. We spent the evening cooking steaks, drinking beer, and talking about everything except the past. Because the past was done. The future was what mattered now. And for the first time in years, that future looked pretty good.